Ladies and gentlemen, we will now commence our next session, which sees a fine lineup of industry leaders to address the topic of elevating maritime expertise, upskilling professionals, and seafarers. In envisioning the future of maritime jobs, it's clear that transformation through digitalization and sustainability will be paramount. This evolution necessitates a workforce comprised of well-trained professionals and seafarers who are capable of navigating the complexities of tomorrow's maritime industry. This session consists of an interactive online Q&A where we encourage guests to post your questions and your comments to the panelists through the Slido QR code to be scanned on the left and right side of the screen. Your session moderator is Mr. Ho Wing Yu, Chairman of the Singapore Maritime Foundation and Chief Executive Officer of Pacific Carriers Limited. Mr. Ho is currently the Managing Director and CEO of Pacific Carriers Limited, the shipping arm of the Quark Group based in Singapore. In years in PCL, he has been leading the transformation of the organization and business portfolio diversification, underscoring a renewed and dedicated focus on process excellence, strategy-driven decision-making, and talent development. Let's all welcome Mr. Ho up on stage, please. Joining Mr. Ho are the following esteemed panelists: Mr. Nakul Malhotra, Vice President of Emerging Opportunities Portfolio at Wilhelmsen; Ms. Caroline Young, President of Singapore Shipping Association and CEO of Honglam Marine; Captain Ashish Medirata, Head of Crewing at Maersk; and Mr. Anderson E., Director of Manufacturing and Connectivity Division at Workforce Singapore. Please join me in welcoming our panel. Mr. Ho, may I hand over the floor to you, please?
Mr. Ho is coming back.
Okay.
Akan datang soon.
Panelists, may I ask you to maybe introduce yourselves first before Mr. Ho arrives? Thank you.
Right. Mr. Ho is back. I'll just give a quick introduction. Anderson E. from Workforce Singapore, a stat board under the Ministry for Manpower, and I cover manufacturing and connectivity sectors. So sea transport, maritime is part of my portfolio, hence I'm here today. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ashish Medirata, Head of Crewing for Maersk, and responsible for 13,000 seafarers sailing on around 270 vessels spread across 35 different nationalities. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Caroline Young. I am the President of Singapore Shipping Association. I am also the CEO of Honglam Marine Private Limited. Thank you.
My name is Nakul. I'm with the Wilhelmsen, and hopefully that doesn't require too much of an explanation. I'm in charge of the Emerging Opportunities Portfolio, which is really our corporate venturing activity. And I'd just like to say that my designation probably represents, I hope, what the conclusion of today's session is. It's emerging opportunities.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm back, just in case you think I'm skirting my job as a moderator this morning. Yeah, I'm back. Well, great to see everyone here. Some very familiar faces, some new ones as well. Welcome to this panel and my distinguished panelists. We are here this morning to talk about something which affects all of us, which is how jobs in maritime are changing and what skill sets do we need to keep up. And boy, do we need to keep up. So I'm going to organize the panel discussions around three broad areas. One is, why are we seeing these changes? It's, of course, very well known that technology, going green are the main drivers. But I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into what that really means for us in the industry. Secondly, we are going to split our focus into sea and shore. And whether you are in the office or on the ship, we all know skill sets are shifting. We all know that the nature of work is evolving rapidly, as you heard from JY of EY just now. So it requires a completely fresh look in my mind about how do we have a better and a seamless integration between sea and shore. They should not be seen as two separate entities. So how are we going to facilitate and smoothen the process is what I want to touch on in my second area. And lastly, the new types of role, the new types of functions that are emerging. And this is a very exciting time for the industry because I think there's going to be lots of opportunities. Some threats as well, but lots of opportunities. So I'm starting this panel with a lot of ambition today. Let's hope we can try to cover as much as we can. We are most welcome to please put your thoughts, your questions on Slido, and I'll try to incorporate them in my questions to my distinguished panelists. Okay, I'm going to go to the first area, which is understanding and identify what are the new demand for skill sets at the industry level and also at the, perhaps out of the industry as well. And I also want to make the point, we all know that the industry is also facing a talent shortage, bringing people into the industry, attracting people to the industry. So with this, I'm going to ask Caroline. Caroline, you have a broad perspective of challenges and opportunities in this industry. And your role as SSA president, as well as also the ship owner, can you shed some light on what are the specific competency and skill sets that are most in demand right now, given all this development that we see in digitalization and going green?
Okay, so there are two areas. One is, of course, I'll share with you on the industry and the company, then the sea and the shore. So I'll be very quick about it. I think I'm not saying anything new. Everyone knows that really what we are seeing in this current time, we are seeing a short of digitalization specialists. We are seeing cybersecurity specialists that are short. So these are the two, because we are going through a very deep digital transformation right now. AI transformation is truly the next step, but this is what we are really short of now. On the industry, this is what we are seeing. On the company side as well, I feel we are short of not only the digitalization specialists, but because of a lot of emphasis on ESG right now. So we do not know what we need to do with ESG, especially for the SMEs. I think they are finding it difficult with ESG collection of data, monitoring of data, reporting of data. So these are roles that needs to be trained. I feel that these competencies are missing. On the seaside, actually, when I visit my ships, I'm very heartened to hear from my crew when they ask me, "Ma'am, are you going to train me for methanol?" So this is what, because methanol is coming in, and ammonia, we still don't have the engines yet. It's coming in 2024, but methanol engines are here already. From a conversation I had with the Methanol Institute, they feel that the molecules will be there. So we need to train our crew on how to safely and properly handle these fuels. One other thing is that we talk so much about alternative fuels. I really feel that we are short of chemical trained ready seafarers. And in the near future, we will be short of the ones who are gas trained. So these are the seafarers that we really need to train. Currently, if there's a report that says we have to train about 900,000 seafarers by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm going to go to perhaps jump to public efforts, on how we forecast and plan for skills development. I'm referring to Anderson shortly, where as you hear just now, the whole maritime sector is evolving so fast, and changing so rapidly. So how do you plan and forecast for things that are so fluid and, and ever-changing? And I'd like to hear your perspective from Workforce Singapore WSG. How do you approach the challenge of preparing and getting our workforce ready in a very dynamic and, evolving sector like maritime.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Ho. Right. I guess everybody here would know. Just now I also heard what Jia Yong mentioned. He's really like an advocate for Workforce Singapore, right? What happened is you are here because the mega trends, the global mega trends already upon us, right? Digitalization, I will include automation, RPA, Gen AI, and things like that, right? And another big wave is actually on sustainability, decarbonization, etc. So on this mega trend, you are here to know how your business are being impacted and how you are pivoting or transforming your business. Next, at the national front, we know that there are initiatives that are being rolled out, say, for example, digital bunkering, for example, electrification of the harbor craft, whether is it on the port side and things like that, right? These are also upon you. But importantly, is how is this being impacted and augmented with your workforce transformation? Right now, what Caroline mentioned, yes, some of the bigger boys, like you know, these are the roles that need to be changed, need to be reskilled, etc. But at the sector level, I think Workforce Singapore and MPA can do more, right? So this year, we are also embarking on the Jobs Transformation Map. The Jobs Transformation Map really is the reference point for the entire sector to look at the impact of the global and national trend to the job roles currently. So those job roles will be distilled by skills, right? So it's not your JD, it's not your experience, but the skills necessary for the current job role to perform the new tasks. After the job transformation map will also inform you, once the impact hits on this particular job role, how the after job role will look like. How many of these companies are impacted, how many of this workforce will be impacted, will be part of the job transformation map where we can reference and we can work with key stakeholders such as MPA, such as our career conversion partner like SSA, as well as SME, to reach out to companies to help them, right? Two intention, two purpose. First, organization now you know how to embark on your transformation journey, bringing along your workforce. Second, individuals from another sector, now that the skills are being distilled, right? He or she, probably from marine offshore, probably from precision engineering, will know that, hey, actually, maritime or sea transport sector is something that I can also value on. And he can come in and join the sector. So while the works of the JTM is being done, we will hope that the companies here do play a part in this so that we can have a reference point for you to work on in upskilling your workforce.
Thank you. I'm going to pick the first question from Slido with our expert panel here. The question is, what would you advise a student looking to pursue the maritime industry? Nakul, perhaps you'd like to address the question?
Thank you. It's fabulous because I have the opportunity of being able to interact with and work very closely to a number of student communities. And this question comes up quite often. What should I do to be able to land a great job? And I think, the most important piece of advice that at least from my perspective I can provide is curiosity. Be as curious as possible on the breadth of opportunity. Be curious about who is a player or participant in this industry. And I think the second piece of advice is, don't be shy of establishing a profile on LinkedIn, for example, and reaching out to senior executives and to people in this industry. You'd be surprised as to how many senior executives I meet and interact with are extremely happy to answer, mentor, and discuss opportunities with student bodies and student groups. So I think that's a really important element is to just don't be shy, take a step out, and trust me, in whatever career you choose, stepping out of your comfort zone will be something that will be with you for a long time. So start early.
Thank you, Nakul. So be bold, be curious, show up, yeah? And be courageous. Come up and, raise your hand, ask profile, find out more about the industry yourself. Okay, I'm going to go into my second area because I'm going to go down into a little bit of a deep diving. So we'll spend a little bit of time on the second area, which is the what. How do we drive changes given the demand for these skill sets? And I'm going to talk about the what at shore and what at sea. But bear in mind, all this evolving demand for skill sets, I think we all must recognize that the impact from tech, from digitalization, from going green, is not going to be uniform across. It's not going to be uniform across companies, or individuals. So I think we need to keep in mind that. And I'm going to turn to Ashish. Ashish has, spent a considerable amount of his early days at sea. Now he's at shore, at Maersk, and he has performed the function of fleet management, performance management, and now in heading up the crewing team. So, question for you, Ashish. Looking from the lens of fleet management shore, what you see are the most transformative technology on board the ships, and how have these changed the skill sets required of a seafarer today?
First of all, it's a pleasure being here, and I can see there are a lot of youngsters in the audience, which actually inspires us to that they've taken their time out and come and listen over here. And I'm sure, and I hope that at the end of this session, we would have a lot more joining the maritime world. And seafarer at heart always stays a seafarer, I can tell you. So vessels in the last few years have evolved a lot. They've gone bigger in size. Technology is advanced. We have things called scrubbers, waste heat recoveries, and if you go on a bridge on a vessel today, it seems like a spaceship, the amount of equipment you have over there. So technology advancement has happened a lot over the last few years, but that also means that the seafarers need to upskill themselves. And with the larger vessels coming in, if you now go to the port and see, it's 20,000 TEU plus vessels. So every vessel has a skill set, but to navigate a large vessel, you need to have different skill set. Especially, for example, when you're transiting the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal, Singapore Strait, you really need to have those skill set to manage these 400-meter long ships over there. So people need to upskill on a regular basis. When vessels get big, the engines get big. Fuel consumption goes high. And we have realized that if you have an optimal running vessel of optimal running engine, there's a potential for a lot of saving on your bunker fuel. With next fuel coming in, methanol and ammonia and other dual fuels to come in future, you would really need to be able to upskill yourself. So people would really have to unlearn what they have done in the past few years, but have the curiosity to learn and adapt with the new technology come in. You cannot be steady. This is what I've learned. This is what will get me through, as it was mentioned in the previous discussion also. So you really need to be open and curious to learn, to advance, and accept the new technology. I can also share with you that last year in June, we had the first container ship to run on e-methanol, Laura Maersk, which was delivered. When we were doing the selection process for 40 positions, that is 2 sets of crew, we had over 1,300 applicants across the company, which shows that seafarers today really want to learn and adapt and be part of the decarbonization journey and upskill themselves. And as of today, we have vessels manned with 21 crew. And there's also a lot of talk in the future, will we have autonomous vessels? And people have got a bit worried what will happen to job, but I think that would take some time. But the interim measure would be is when we have AI technology decision being taken, equipment which can take a few things on their own, do we require to have the same level of manning? We may look at reduced manning at some period of time, but that will also pave what is going to be the competency of seafarers who are going to sail on board. And could it be that we don't need to have 4 deck officers and 4 engineers? Do we have dual officers, dual ratings, who will do a bridge watchkeeping and will go and also help in the engine room? And to have these skill sets is going to be where you require people with a high intellect level. So we have to start accepting that we will not run ships conventionally. We would want to run in a most efficient manner, and people would be required to do much beyond just one responsibility is to keep bridge watch, or I will go and overhaul the auxiliary engine. You could be doing both tasks at a time. And this has been tried out before, a number of years back. It was quite a success, and I'm sure this will start to be talked about and coming out. Thank
Ashish, I'm going to ask you a second question. Let's apply some empathy. Let's look from the lens of the seafarers, where you were many years ago. You know, the seafarers hear this, you know, what needs to be done and so on and so forth. But if you put yourself in their shoes, all this change must be really uncomfortable for them. So what do you think that we need to do to motivate the seafarers to upskill, to want to change? And is there a possible career path even beyond the ships if they want to do so? Would that be some form of motivation? Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. And I think really important to understand is that when you join, say, as a 18 or a 19-year-old, everyone doesn't become a captain or a chief engineer. While some may have an ambition, and being in crewing, I would really want a lot many to go up to the rank because we need that experience. Experience can be gained, cannot be bought over period, you know. So also, there's a career beyond sea. When I say beyond sea is just not to be a captain chief engineer, but to be sitting in a ship owning, MPA, for example, classification societies, training academies. So a lot of our ex-seafarers will come into the jobs over here and start to work on policies, procedures, which will help for the enhancement. And the important is that how do we transition them from sea to shore? The working environments are different. The responsibilities are different. And for those who have sailed, and when they have transited to shore, same like for me, it was a bit of a cultural shock, if you may say. But that's where, how do we help them? How do we have a sea to shore program where we run through a structured way of getting them to align on how to operate an office? Then can we have reputable institutes run a 3 to 6 months program on sea to shore, where we have our seafarers undergo training on financial understanding, management skill, leadership skill, data analysis, cybersecurity, and then preparing them what a corporate culture is all about. So I think there needs to be a structured approach in helping our seafarers migrate to shore and setting them up for success. And I think that's really important because we need to build our shore organization also in order to have all the advancements happening and to support the global trade.
Thank you. I would like to turn to Nakul again, if I could. Yeah, I mean, I want to look from the perspective of the shore base, and you have been involved in a lot of, discussions and engagement with startups and innovation in the maritime sector. Can you shed light on the skill gaps and challenges faced when we adopt new technology? And I also like to tap, your mind a little bit into how do these gaps and challenges vary between a startup and a very established shipping company like Williamson, for example?
Thank you. That's a that's a fascinating question. So I think first of all, this idea of sort of the transition is it's deeply personal for me. I've spent a lot of years, and we won't say how much, in the industry. But having experienced the transition of being from a seafarer going into a shore-based role isn't the end of the transition and isn't the only transition. I think that I just want to make that point here as well, because then through that process, there's also transitions towards. I initially spent my time in sales, marketing, operations, and then went into product development and innovation, and then venture capital, and I'm on a very steep learning curve in the venture capital space. And one of the things that we see, particularly when we're interacting with startups, the best kind of startups for our industry are the ones who recognize the bridging of domain expertise with their technology solutions. So what that means is, if I was to flip this around, actually the role that is perhaps most sought after are exactly the roles that seafarers are performing on the ships. It's just that the startups may not really have access to those seafarers. It's not that easy. And I think that's something that we should keep in mind, because a lot of the solutioning, the users are the crew. They are the people who are sailing. And I think that opens up a huge opportunity space for seafarers wanting to get involved in this type of arena. I think the second element around startups and sort of the skills gap, I mean, not only related to the industry, but in general, I think the ability to communicate the ability to tell your story, the ability to put together a fabulous narrative, or in startup speak, the ability to do a proper pitch. I think it's sometimes underestimated that that skill actually gets developed very, very early on. And so that's the ability to communicate your story and your need is really, really important. And it'll be something that you take through multiple career pathways. And then, of course, there's all the entire plethora of the technology skills that we are looking for and that Caroline mentioned as well earlier. And the question around the technology space is really, we are not in competition with each other, we're in competition with other industries for those kinds of skills. And I think that, connecting it to the purpose that JY mentioned earlier in his presentation, a lot of times, at least in the early career phases or when you're moving from student to career, you're kind of obsessed with these top 10 lists, right? What are the top 10 careers and the top 10 paying companies and the top 10 this and the top 10 that. I think one of the things that from an industry perspective we should think about is, maybe maritime is a top 10 industry that is addressing sustainability. Maybe maritime is a top 10 industry in terms of scope for digital transformation. Maybe maritime is a top 10 industry in terms of opportunity to move between different functions, geographies, and operations. Maybe maritime is a top 10 industry in terms of international exposure. And I think, we need to reframe that. From a Williamson perspective, of course, tapping into all of those different digital skills, we've been doing a lot of work in that. And it's a combination of hiring organically, but also we've acquired pools of talent. One of the challenges that we did face very early on was, we would hire maybe perhaps one data scientist and one programmer and so on and so forth. After a period of time, you realize that there isn't enough gravity to retain that talent. They're a little bit left out. They're a little bit disconnected. So the other thing that we've been very, very conscious about is creating an adequate center of gravity for those talent pools and making sure that they're actually deeply and very sort of tangibly connected to our operating business units so that they're truly part of the operating business and not some sort of innovation team that is sitting in a corner somewhere else in a co-working space. I think we're pretty obsessed about making sure they're closely integrated.
Thank you very much. This is an excellent perspective. I mean, Nakul, you spoke a lot about communication. I think that's something that we all recognize in the maritime industry. We need to do a lot more better, right? Appealing to both the minds and the hearts, right? The purpose, what we're going to be doing. And I think it's probably very important that all of us here in the room and many others as, people have been in the industry for some time as leaders to be able to tell a good story, to have the right narrative, right? And able to use that to kind of share our experience to bring more people in this industry that is, it's not just a one-off, but it's going to be, enduring and sustainable and will stay for a long time. So thank you very much for that. I've got a lot of questions on Slido. I'm struggling a little bit to catch up because there's quite a fair bit of interesting questions, but a lot of those are around career progression. How do you transition? And how do you go from schools into it? How do you attract seafarers and so on and so forth? But I would try to address some of these questions in my next area, which is really looking at functions, roles. How do we build the pipeline? How do we look into scaling? And how do we bring in people, but also retaining people along this whole pipeline? And as we talk about the evolving landscape of skill sets, some of these shifts may actually fundamentally transform the functions and the role themselves. And there's a broader industry trend that we are seeing that due to tech, due to sustainability imperatives, we are talking about evolution, but some roles may be going through revolution. Some roles, may completely change, or some new roles may emerge. So we talk about career progression. I think we're really talking about quite a lot of possibilities, right? I want to go back to you, Caroline. Again, from the industry perspective, from a ship owner, right? How have you observed some new distinct roles that have emerged within perhaps the SSA members of all your organization in response to this, digital and decarb imperatives?
So I spoke earlier just now about the new types of jobs that we are seeing. So within the company, actually, my IT department is costing me a lot of money because it's really getting more and more expensive with digital transformation, with cybersecurity. So we are internally training our staff that we identify to be cybersecurity specialists. So we are sending him for courses because we are not getting the talent that we can find outside. And being SME is difficult to find that talent. So we do it internally. So I think cybersecurity specialist is really one area. The other area, as I said, is the ESG. So I took the plunge this year in January to start an ESG department. And again, a lot is talked about ESG. There are ESG departments of many big companies, but when you come to SME, you cannot find them. So I go internally again, and I ask my staff who's interested. Actually, there are quite a number of hands who raise that they are interested in this new area. So I got them in, I got 2 of them in, and I told them this is the year that I will train you. I'll send you for courses. You have to read up, but we start small. And now we have an ESG department, we have our SDGs, and we have our action plans. But now is the collection of data. And so they're collecting the data, and they put it in very nice charts for me. And I said, I know I don't have answers. What do we do now? So now we have to look for outside of our industry who can provide the answers for us to the questions from our data. So really, I'm seeing that these are roles, that these are skill sets that is required for any company, and very much so in the maritime sector. Then, of course, again, the seafarers, really, the roles, I worry because if we don't train our seafarers fast enough, we will see an imbalance of the seafarers who have skill sets in chemical tankers and also the gas tankers. They will be in very much high demand, and the salaries will be very high, and until the rest of the seafarers get trained. So this is really a gap that we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, maritime industry, there are a lot of traditions, sometimes almost in a negative connotation. But I want to explore the theme about tradition meeting innovation. And I'm going to refer to Nakul again. Can you share some examples on how traditional maritime functions are redefined by Williamson? And are these new functions filled by traditional maritime people with some upscaling and training? Caroline talked about training, Anderson and Ashish as well. And maybe I could be a bit provocative. Can these traditional guys, can they really be trained?
Oh, fabulous. Thank you very much for the question, Mangu. You know, when you mentioned tradition, I remember, for many of you who have sailed during a period some years ago, let's just say, you'll remember the King Neptune tradition when you cross the equator. That no longer exists, so it is possible to change. I think, you know, this is a really important point, and I think Ashish referred to it as well. Just as ashore we have bell curves of capability and talent and so on and so forth, I think at sea we have those same sort of bell curves, not always used. Is it possible for the more traditional people to change? It comes back to the mindset. I think just as with any pool of people, you will have a certain percentage on the right of the bell curve absolutely not only willing to change, but wanting to change. You will have similarly a certain percentage of people on the left of the bell curve who are, for want of a better description, who will act like the white blood cells of an organization and defend on any kind of change, infection that is coming through. And I think the ways of addressing that are well documented in terms of change management. I think also what's important is not to forget the middle of the bell curve, who are a little bit on the fence, a little bit unsure, a little bit not quite clear on A, what does the change mean? But B, how am I supposed to respond or participate in this change? And I think a lot of activities, a lot of initiatives really need to be able to bring that middle of the bell curve with you. But perhaps that isn't the first place to start. So I think ambassadors of change, I'm a big believer of that. Start where it's easy. Start with people who are desperate, almost wanting to change because they know that's the only way they're going to stay relevant. It's the same experience I've had personally. And I've also seen it around us. So when we first started an innovation program within our product management and product development team, I didn't quite start with the people who believed that vessel technology will never change. I started with the people who thought, well, we're in the middle of a transformation and something is going to change. And slowly but surely you see that culture shift. Very much possible for traditional marine engineers. Ultimately, and you mentioned we have our own little traditions. The other thing we do is we have wonderful terminology that is not very translatable. So sometimes it's important for us to perhaps think about those abbreviations and terminology. Marine engineering is really mechanical engineering with marine specialization. And I think when you think of it that way, it becomes a lot wider and more accessible. And we saw traditional marine engineers taking on interest and elements around 3D printing, around IoT. What was very heartening to see was that it wasn't only within Williamson, we were able to catalyze some interest in our wider ecosystem across the customer base, across our supplier base, and so on and so forth. Similarly, on the data and analytics side, of course, great data scientists, some very, very smart people being able to do all kinds of magic with sort of data. But the real value actually comes when we're being able to combine domain expertise that provides insight into what do we do with that data. It's the actionable insight where the value actually comes in. And that is where another example where perhaps some of our more traditional domain experts start to interact with these data scientists. And the first few conversations are fascinating because the data scientists are talking all about regressions, progressions, and statistics. And the domain experts are saying, when I was at sea, and so on and so forth, this is how many times I saw it. And at some point, we find a middle ground that they're able to speak each other's language. Again, really important that there's a level of curiosity on both sides. What does this mean for you? What are you saying, and what does that mean for me? Second, getting out of the comfort zone. This dashboard doesn't give me anything is a very different response to, if this dashboard gave me this, I would be able to do something with it. And that's on us. That's on our, let's say, the more traditional people with lots of experience. You know, how are you going to leverage that experience? So I think, you know, some of those examples and some of those journeys have been there. Along the way, we've had the opportunity of, let's call it playing with or exploring AR, VR, XR, 3D printing, IoT, autonomy, and almost every other technology aspect around. I think the one element that we've been pretty focused on is that we're not in it for the technology. We take a very pain point centric or process centric approach. So we're always looking for, how does this solve a pain that we're feeling? And the people who know the pain, understand the pain, how big is the pain, are the traditional domain experts. So it's not only wanted, it's crucial for us to be able to connect and translate. And along the way, lots of training and lots of sort of support, but you cannot get away from just some level of personal interest and ambition to want to do something different.
Thanks very much, Naku, for that. I'll call you a die-hard shipping, gentleman, and obviously, you're marrying a lot of the love for the industry and the traditions of the industry, but also looking in a more innovative way. And I'd like to ask you, Anderson, you could, someone not in the industry, outside kind of looking in, right? Your perspective on how would you think that we should be addressing this topic, this subject matter from a mindset, from a cultural perspective? I see a lot of these questions, if I read deep into these questions, it's really about, I want to get into maritime. I want to have maritime, have the right mindset to do so, but how do you do it? So if I could ask you perhaps to share some perspective with our audience here.
Right. I'm actually very heartened to hear Naku talking about those things about change management, redesigning, and things like that. I think for people to look into maritime sector, to be honest, the companies, the industry, need to be a bit more bold, right? Bold means what? Your job redesign should be your fundamental route to entice people from outside the maritime sector to even look at the maritime sector, right? Your current job, your description, your job title, is it really like that? Is there opportunity for you now to look at digitalization, look at Gen AI, look at data, look at green skills? Is that job role still the same? Right. If you feel that, hey, look, now I need to redesign my job, I need to redesign the role, I send my staff for training, do it internally first, create that new role, create that new job, right? Then jointly together with the industry stakeholders, for example, MPA, SMF, my program partner for career conversion program, we will do outreach, we will engage other sectors, professionals, PMETs, or people that perhaps they look at the job, they will think that, hey, this is something that resonates with me, right? The young people will say, hey, this is some green maritime specialist or some data analyst for the maritime sector. So they wouldn't, if without that, they will always think that their role is always in fintech, is always in ICT sector and things like that, and they never look at the maritime. So change that, right? Then internally, besides attracting new talents, internally perhaps also be bold to reskill and redesign your existing workforce, right? Again, by doing so, you actually perhaps open up new talent, open up new capability that you always think that, hey, I can only recruit from outside. But sometimes, if you redesign the job role, you understand the skills required, you can look at your own profile of workforce and say, hey, look, actually, I have this group of people who just need to top up X number of skill set, redesign the role, and they can do similar kind of work. I give you an example. Just now, the Jia Yong already mentioned a lot on logistic and air transport companies, right? So that one is very valid. I leave it as that. I would want to bring an example from a precision engineering sector. This is a MNC in consumer electronics. And as you know, consumer electronics is slowly moving out, right? We are keeping the key R&D, IoT kind of skill set in Singapore. So the company is pivoting, very good. Global impact, business impact, they're changing. They come to me, say, Anderson, I'm looking for software engineers, I'm looking for programmers because I'm going into IoT. Very good ambition. And they post up the vacancy on my careers future under Workforce Singapore for more than 6 months. So they come, nobody. It is a cold job. Cold job means they put up, nobody come. So I am very honest and candid. I say, no, Mr. Company, right? You can wait. You will never get it on. Why? Because software engineer, all this deep tech talent, the cream, all go to the likes of, all the Amazon, Tencent, and things like that. The next group flow down will be all the fintech, right? All the telco, etc. And what's left for manufacturing? Actually, not much, right? So he can wait, and you will never come. Then you say, oh, then Anderson, how? I say, why don't you look at your existing workforce? But my existing workforce are not software engineers, no, they are mechanical engineers. So talking about tradition, right? The engineers, they are also very traditional one, right? Mechanical engineers, I say, look, they have STEM. In their course of study, don't forget they have portable skills. They used to do some COBOL programming and things like that, the old school one. Actually, I never go, I'm younger than that. So what happened is, I said, why don't you get this group, reskill them? Reskill doesn't mean just train and hopefully they do 20% of the job with the new skills. You reskill them and you make sure you change their job. Make them firmware engineers. Then, now I'm not a mechanical engineer. I'm a firmware engineer. They go through the transformation, 3 months, supported by WSG. So to the companies, there's no loss. Because we come in to incentivize, we fund up to 90% of the salary for 3 months for them to do that. So they say, okay, Anderson, nothing to lose, let's do it. And now they have a group of 40 firmware engineers, developing IoT solution and software for their parent company and for their client in the global regional market. So this is one good example, right? Are we bold enough? You guys here, I hear the speeches, I hear a lot of all this presentation. You all are doing good things, you all are doing a lot of new things. But sometimes when I look at the MCF, my career's future, when I look at the vacancy and all these are all very traditional title, right? So if, let's say, I urge, after today's discussion, in order to relook, maybe try to rebrand yourself, rebrand the job role, redesign the job role, then perhaps, you can entice more people to join first, and secondly, retain your good staff, to do higher value work, and also to support your industry and support your company better. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that answers some of the questions we got. Opportunity for individuals without maritime experience joining maritime, conversion mid-career into maritime. So thank you very much for that, Anderson. I'm going to go to back to maritime, and I want to look again at the Seafarers pool, an extremely important pool. I mean, it sounds almost like, there's orchards of low-hanging fruits, a lot of seafarers. Can we really draw on this pool of seafarers is really my question, right? We love to, but is it as easy as it sounds? And, what are the challenges that's faced? And is this pool of people as agile and adaptable to really, for us to tap, to bring into really fulfilling roles in maritime? And I want to refer to Ashish, if you can give us your perspective.
Yeah, I think seafarers are an important set of people with 80% of the global trade by volume and 70% by value is carried out at sea. So seafarers are important, will always remain important. But I think important is that are we really harnessing the capabilities they have, or are we stereotyping them? They can only be a navigator or an engineer on board. And to the point Anderson said, a mechanical engineer can be transformed to a software engineer. I think we're really not being good at articulating what is the true potential and how utilization can be done. So it's really important is whenever we start something, engage the seafarers from day one, have them part of it, because you get a buy-in from them when you want to roll out something, and you also get the perspective. So, for example, if you're rolling out a project in Maersk, we would have a sounding board of our experienced colleagues from sea who would come and give their perspective, and that helps us have the message spread across, the value of what we're trying to do, and also get a lot of learning because they see things practically which people in the office may not see. Have sounding boards where they come and give their opinion. And I can tell you get a captain who's been 30 years out at sea, he can give an opinion for 2 hours, but there's a lot of value in that because he's so focused, he believes or she believes so much in what they do, they will really come without any bias and they will be straight to the point, and that benefits. So some benefit we have seen is diversity is higher agenda for us, and gender being one of them. So when we were building our new building vessels, we invited a group of our women seafaring colleagues and said, we want you to sail on these ships. Where do you think we can help improve your experience when you're sailing on board for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months period of time? So we got officers and ratings into our workforce to come and give ideas. So then we started to implement that in our new building design, and the response we've got, they're really happy about it. So getting them involved from day one, hearing them out, taking their perspective, that helps bridge the gap, gets buy-in, and we're also harnessing the knowledge we have. So if you go in an office, have 10 people, you probably have 100 years of experience. Go on a ship, you have 10 officers and 10 ratings, you probably have 300 years of experience over there. So we really need to see is how much can we harness and get from our colleagues out at sea.
Thank you very much. So it sounds like it's imminently possible, to get our, seafarer folks to come in. And of course, as a lot of questions being asked. You're also getting young people, from the schools who want to sail or may not want to sail to also get into maritime. It's just, I guess, give them the purpose, embolden them, the ABC, right? Adaptability, the bonus, and the curiosity and courage, as Nako was saying, to get them into maritime, and hopefully they stick around for a long, long time to come. Yeah, I'm going to go to the theme of this Singapore Maritime Week. It is action meeting ambition. And it's not about ambition meeting action, but it's the other way around. And I want to ask these questions to Caroline. Caroline is one of the person I always admire. She's always able to bring us down from 5,000 feet to 5 feet, right? So upscaling, talent pipeline is a massive topic, right? So I want to ask you, Caroline, what do you think are the immediate actions that the industry, the government, the ship owners, and other parties, the collaboration or the coalition of what I hear, that we must collaborate in the next 2 years? What are the must-do and what are the no-regrets move?
Wow, very difficult question. Okay, I try my best. In the next 2 years, okay, I start with a broad area that I am almost 35 years in this industry, and I have never seen where we are really in a transformation stage. And for me, transformation means that we can reset. We can reset on how we envision maritime industry and how we want to bring the maritime industry to the next stage. And I think JY said, at the end of the day, it's about our people. So we have the seafarers. How do we make sure that it is a just transition for our seafarers, that we truly leave no one behind? And gender, equity, inclusivity, how we can best bring that to the highest level that we can do. So these 2 years to me is very crucial. We set the values and we come up with the action plans. So I'm so blessed to be in Maritime Singapore because the government is so proactive. We have set up a maritime energy training facility, and when Ihan spoke to SSA, come on board and be one of our partners, then he shared about the work that they did. So I told Ihan, actually, you're doing a lot already, So we are just coming in to support you. So you have a government that is very proactive. And of course, we have WSG to support us in our career conversion program. So there is a lot of activities on the shore side as well as the seafaring side. But I feel we really need that fundamental values. We always remember that we need to come back to the fundamental values of we have an opportunity here to make changes. We have an opportunity here to make sure we make it equitable, not only in terms of gender, but also nationality, race. How do we do that properly for the maritime sector?
Thank you, Caroline. I picked up a very interesting question here. It's, not dealing with aspirations or ambition, but really, the concerns or the perception on the ground, rightly or wrongly. I always like to go a little bit under the skin and talk about soft underbellies, more than just what we want to do and all the good stuff, right? And the question here is that our industry is global, and despite sincere efforts, certainly great intent, sincere efforts, we have not been successful as an employer of choice to attract the young and the brightest of the school leavers, and also not able to stem the attrition of seafarers prematurely. And the gentleman like to tap some thoughts from the panel. So maybe I could refer to Nako and then perhaps next to Ashish, your perspective on this question.
Thank you. I think it's an interesting question and really taps into the heart of some of the things that we've been talking about. And I think also we've got to be cognizant of the kind of generational shift. If I take an example, let's say in India, in the previous generation, in my father's generation, actually the maritime industry was considered to be a very prestigious and premium industry, and there were extremely good students, etc., going towards the industry. And then I think what happened was that we entered into the IT phase, and we entered into the fintech phase, and we went into other phases where let's call it competing industries just became more attractive and perhaps better remuneration. I think at the fundament of it, I think it comes back to a comment I made earlier about the top 10 lists. I mean, we don't feature in a top 10 list in a multi-industry evaluation, ever. And yet, we have these wonderful statistics about being the backbone of global trade and 80% of this and 70% of this. I think we've just got to reframe our position of the industry. Like I mentioned, maybe we are actually a top 10 industry in the face of change. Maybe we are a top 10 industry in the face of global decarbonization. Maybe we're a top 10 industry across many other things. So I think that puts some level of attractiveness around purpose, because the next generation of talent is coalescing around purpose. So we have to articulate our purpose much, much clearer and much more sensitive to their needs as well. The second thing is that we talk about these transitions and so on and so forth. I think, the concern also, and you can imagine this, right, from a school leaver perspective is, am I signing up to an industry that will basically on my CV mean that I have no translatable skill if I ever want to go to another industry? And yet we're debating desperately on how do we tap talent from other industries. I think similarly, it should be actually a moment of pride if people from this industry are also being able to expand their horizons and move faster. I think it's great if there are more seafarers setting up startups. I think it's great if there are more experts and domain experts here being able to scale up on other things. I think we've really got to wave the flag. So I think ultimately it comes down to attractiveness. I think we're far too focused in the early stages around attractiveness equal to compensation. I think the next generation, that is one element of what makes an industry attractive. I think there's a lot more around it, and we've just got to be back to communicating. We've got to communicate it in a different way, and we've also got to engage with those 16-year-olds who are forming their university decisions. I think we just get involved a little bit too late, and so let's go back a little bit and start to get some of those conversations going and highlight. I'm going to say, I think that every single person here above a certain age, having been in this industry for more than, I would say, 7 to 8 years, has undertaken some form of personal transformation, which is what makes them relevant and being in the room today. If that is the case, share that experience and narrate the story. It's exactly what young people want to hear, in my view.
Yeah, from my side, I think one thing shipping has not been good at is articulating what the seafarers can do. If you take decarbonization, shipping is in the forefront. Cars are still running on petrol with a very small number of them in electric. That's the transformation they have done. Shipping long time back went into LNG. Methanol was big, ammonia is coming in. So if you see all these advancements which have happened in shipping are far more compared to others. You see an aircraft 1940 or now, a little bit change in design. See the vessel from 1940 to 2020, a phenomenal change in design. But we have never been really good at going out to the world and telling what is out at sea. We're only there, remembered when something goes wrong. When COVID came, people remember seafarers. They forgot after that. When Evergreen happens, Evergiven happens in Suez, people remember. They can't get their stuff on time. That's the time to remember. But we also need to start to show the value we are adding. And that actually goes for everyone in this room. And beyond this, how do we start to do that? Second is that schools have subjects as biology or chemistry for you to be a chemical engineer, for you to start understanding why there's nothing called as maritime over there. So we are talking to a few governments is to get for 15-year-old to have a subject on maritime science or maritime technology, for them to start understanding there is maritime also there. So we really need to go down to Knuckles' point, is the 16 years old, start explaining them the benefit. Maybe I'll use a small example, what people miss out. For those who have children who are adult, I have a 21-year-old. If she wants a car, I'm quite hesitant to give a car for her to drive on her own. But if she was to be sailing today, 21, you could be a duty officer on a ship, $100 million worth, cargo worth $500 million, responsible for 25 lives on board. So the immense responsibility they get to do when they're out at sea, whereas we are scared to give them a $100,000 car, right? So I think we're really missing out to tell the potential and what all can be done outright. I think we really need to go educating them and at the young guys to tell them the role they can play and what they contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. I think we are coming quite close to the end of the conclusion. Maybe I can just quickly sum up. I think what we are looking to address is bridging skill sets. That's how we started. Preparing for new roles. I think along the way, we also gone into, it's also about changing mindset. It's also about changing and doing better in terms of communicating, role modeling, and exciting people, exciting young people, exciting not so young people. Come to the industry, whether you are a seafarer or whether you are in the industry or from outside the industry. So I guess perhaps the theme for the next SMW, purpose meet pragmatism perhaps, and get ourselves really preparing and get down into how we can really bring in more people and, and develop meaningful careers from, for people joining the industry for a long time to come. So with that, I would like to thank my fellow panelists. Thanks very much for all your insightful comments and perspective. I'd like to thank all of you for sharing your last 1 hour with us in this panel. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hall, and our esteemed panelists. Please remain on the stage to take a group photo. Thank you, everyone. You may now return to your seats.